What's up, geeks? My name is Joey, otherwise known as the Iron Cowboy Gunnar Lang, back here on When Geeks Collide, and we've noticed that Steve's Marvel Legends Top 10 video was well received by you guys. You guys liked it. So I decided to do my own top 10. But my top 10 is going to be my top 10 DC Multiverse McFarlane figures. Not just of 2021, but of my entire collection overall. And to start this top 10, I am just gonna go ahead and show you guys right here my honorable mentions. And speaking of my honorable mentions, this was absolutely the hardest pose I've ever pulled off on this device, on this turn device. Getting them all to balance at the same time, getting Robin to not drop his shuriken, and Wonder Woman to drop her lasso, and Superman, Red Sun not to tip over. Nightwing was the only one that didn't give me much trouble. I'm just going to go ahead and appreciate this for a hot second. But yeah, these are my honorable mentions. You've seen on the channel before, Steve review a Wonder Woman from the original Wonder Woman movie, and review also this Damian Wayne Robin, two of which clearly I have in my own collection as well. Some of you would put them much higher. Some of them would put you actually, some of you would actually put them on your top 10, and that's awesome. We would love to, like Steve says, see your top 10s in the comments below. But for now, these are my top 10s honorable mentions. I love all these figures. Do not get me wrong. Steve brings up the Mind's Eye a lot in his Marvel Legends top 10. And that's what a lot of my list will have to do with. These figures, while Robin and Nightwing are absolutely what I would picture in my mind's eye when I think of these characters, I just have some more figures that I happen to love so much more. Red Sun Superman, so cool. I love Elseworld stories, especially when they're done as well as the Red Sun story was. And I usually don't like to collect movie-based figures just because I'm so hard set on the comics accurate figures. But I could not resist this Gal Gadot Wonder Woman figure. It's I'm going to use the term mind's eye a lot in this video, and to continue this right now, Gal Gadot's on-screen Wonder Woman is the closest thing to my mind's eye of a superhero that I have seen probably ever in a live-action movie. So, not quite on my top 10. If it was an actual pulled from the comics mind's eye Wonder Woman, then it would have been right on my top 10. But honorable mentions goes to this Wonder Woman, this Red Sun Superman, this Damian Wayne Robin, and this Nightwing. I have one more honorable mention that I will bring up right before my number one pick, which, by the way, keep watching, I swear, if you know me at all, or if you have seen me on this channel at all, will be shocked. I promise to shock you with my number one pick on this top 10. So, with that said, let's get right into number 10. Racing in at top 10, obviously pun totally intended, is The Flash. This rendering of The Flash is from the pages of DC Rebirth. And this figure particularly is from the Red Death and Flash 2-pack. Obviously inspired by the Dark Knight's Metal event, Flash and Red Death face off in the Red Death one-shot from Dark Knight's Death Metal. Sorry, Metal, not Death Metal. And Flash is my number 2 favorite superhero of all time, and this figure in particular would be much higher on my list for one reason, if not for one reason. I absolutely love this figure, do not get me wrong. The face sculpt, it's a very specific situational face sculpt. It's like I said, from the 2-pack of him racing with Red Death, and it's very intense. It's made for that diorama piece, which was part of which that standing piece from my honorable mentions, the long piece where Nightwing and Wonder Woman were standing, came from. So I do intend to get the alternate face sculpt of this figure, and when I do, maybe it'll show up much, much higher on one of my top 10s in the future. But for now, this is the Flash at number 10. Now entering at number 9, we have John Cena. Of course, I mean Peacemaker. From the Suicide Squad King Shark Build-A-Figure wave. I mentioned in my honorable mentions that I am not usually the biggest fan on figures that are based on movie interpretations of the characters, but I do absolutely make exceptions for some characters and figures, this one being one of them. I absolutely loved John Cena as Peacemaker in the Suicide Squad, and this figure itself, it's just so toyetic. How can you not like this if you're a fan of superhero action figures or just action figures in general? I may have mentioned on this channel or on my Horizon Comics YouTube channel in the past that I am a big fan of obscure comic book characters. And as you will notice, is the case for most of, if not entirely, the cast of The Suicide Squad by James Gunn, they are all obscure characters. He legitimately Googled the weirdest characters in DC Comics to put in this movie, which is exactly how characters such as Ratcatcher and Polka Dot Man ended up in the movie. And I fully enjoyed Polka Dot Man in the movie. However, you will not be seeing him on this list. Spoiler alert. Just not my favorite figure. Interesting character to me, but not my favorite character. This one absolutely is obscure. I knew about him from the comics prior to being in the movie. He is known historically as the inspiration for the comedian of Watchmen. When the Watchmen were created, DC was approached with the idea for the Watchmen, and they were asked if these characters could be used, Peacemaker being one of them for this story. When they said no, Watchmen went ahead and included Peacemaker in their own interpretation as the comedian anyway. But I digress. I'm going to go ahead and move right along to number 8. At number 8, I have another gun-trotting anti-hero, this one being one of my favorites and many, many others' favorites, Red Hood. Jason Todd himself, as a character, not my favorite character, not even in my top 5 of favorite Batman characters. Don't get me wrong, still an insanely cool character, absolutely love him. But this figure in particular was an absolute must-have in my top 10. I was so thrilled to find it when I did. And just to look at this, the paint job is absolutely immaculate. The way that they made the shine in the helmet of Red Hood, it makes it just stand out as that centerpiece of the character that it is. And it's just absolutely beautiful. The guns that were included, which McFarlane doesn't seem to do too much anymore, are a really important touch to the character, very important detail. I got this character at the same time as my Flashpoint Batman. You also probably saw the reviews that Steve put up of said Flashpoint Batman and this Red Hood figure here on the channel before. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. Not much more to say about this character. I just really love this figure. Oh, I have had a Red Hood figure in the past. I believe it was from Mattel. And it's a great figure, but this one just really, really outdoes itself. With that said, I'm going to move right along to number 7. At number 7, if you saw it before on one of my previous figure reviews on this channel, is Dr. Fate, specifically the Injustice Gods Among Us video game inspired Dr. Fate McFarlane figure. I'm not going to go into too much detail on this figure here, as you can just go ahead and look at my review here on the channel of this figure. for my in-depth, detailed review and thoughts on the figure. I will just say on here that this is up on my top 10 list just because it's one of my favorite characters in DC Comics. My absolute favorite, definitely my absolute favorite magical-based character in DC Comics, to say the least. But yep, with that said, I'm going to move along up to number 6. Here at number 6, almost at the halfway point of this top 10 list, is Teen Titans Cyborg. Teen Titans, the original Teen Titans animated series, was one of my absolute favorite shows to watch when I was younger, and still to this point remains one of my favorite animated shows ever. It was right up there with Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. It usually came on roughly around the same time slot, if I recall correctly, on YTV, and I would always watch them together. And I always kind of put them together in my head as like from the same universe, even though clearly they were most likely not. This is the only of the Teen Titans cast that did receive a McFarlane DC Multiverse treatment. And honestly, if it stays that way, I'm okay with it. I'm a completionist, so I would absolutely have to buy the rest of them, especially if they released a Beast Boy, because Beast Boy is one of my top 10 favorite characters. Just saying. But this, while it is not my mind's eye version of Cyborg, Cyborg is one of my top 10 favorite superheroes ever. And getting this figure was an absolutely crucial must-have for me. It's one of my favorite interpretations, screen interpretations of Cyborg. Probably would prefer the DC animated universe movies Cyborg, or an actual from the comics like DC Rebirth, DC New 52 Cyborg would be absolutely ideal for me. But because I don't have any of those, and this one is so cool anyway, it's absolutely one of the most toyetic figures I have. That's why I made it so high on my top 10 list. Coming in at the final spot of the first half of this top 10 list is a figure that was my first ever figure review on this channel, John Stewart Green Lantern. There's not much else I could say about this figure that wasn't already said in my review, but I absolutely love this character. And to say that it's surprising that it's only number 5 on my list is an understatement, but that isn't the shocking factor on this list, I promise you. This is one of my top favorite superheroes ever, one of my top 3 favorite Green Lanterns. But look at it, it's to use the word toyetic again, just because Jeff loves it so much, and Steve actually does. It's a great figure, and I am absolutely ecstatic to have it in my collection. So it's an absolute must-have inclusion on my top 10 list. Kicking off the second half of this list at the number 4 spot is one of my more recent purchases, and actually one of my most recent reviews on this channel is this Snyder Cut Justice League gold label Dark Side figure. I raved about it in my review, so I won't go too heavy on that in here, but look at this. It's such a huge figure with so much articulation, which impresses me so much. And it's a Dark Side figure. I've always wanted one. It's definitely one of my favorite figures. It is one of those exceptions of that rule of mine where I don't usually collect that much of movie-based or movie interpretations of characters. So just the sheer fact of that this figure is so good that it defeats that general rule of mine is exactly why it ends up so high on this list. And with that said, we're going to move into the top 3 on this list. In the number 3 spot is none other than the Joker. Steve also did a review of this particular figure, not mine, but this particular figure on the channel. Go ahead and check that out. He is absolutely my #1 favorite villain of any fiction ever, which is also the case for countless others for good reason. The only place for Joker on any list involving DC Comics is this high, with exceptions of, you know, top 10 good guys or whatever, because that's absolutely not the place for this guy. So, yeah, he made it to the top 3. Would have been higher if not for the actual top 2, which, by the way, let's go ahead and get right into. And as promised, way back at the beginning of this video, I am about to shock anyone who knows me, anyone who has seen a couple particular figure reviews of mine on this channel, with my penultimate pick for this top 10 DC Multiverse McFarlane figure review. I present to you my #2 pick, Hal Jordan Green Lantern. Why is this so shocking? If you know me, and if you've seen my reviews of my Green Lantern figures on this channel, then you know exactly why. If not, let me fill you in. Green Lantern, specifically Hal Jordan Green Lantern, is my #1 favorite superhero of all time, ever, no questions asked. However, this is only ever so marginally, by a fraction, edged out by the #1 pick on this list. I raved about this figure up and down on my review, gave it a 10 out of 10 rating. However, if I'm going to go back to that famous phrase that we have been using in this video, in my mind's eye, this is just ever so slightly out of my mind's eye version of Green Lantern. It is the more, I would call it the more Injustice style of costume, a little more edgy, in terms of, not edgy in terms of, you know, being edgy, but like rigid is a better word to use. A little more rigid in its details. It looks a little bit more armored than energy constructed, but that's just a nitpick, absolutely not a complaint. This is absolutely one of my top favorite figures ever. I could actually do a top 10 Green Lantern figures out of all the Green Lantern figures I have. Let me know in the comments if you want to see that, and where this figure would be placed on that list. But on this list in particular, he is #2. And now, before we go to my #1 pick of DC Multiverse McFarlane figures, let's go to my final honorable mention. That's right. My final and top honorable mentions pick is 7 figures. Is it a cop-out? Absolutely. Do I care? Not even a little bit. Because I absolutely love all of these figures. I started collecting these figures as like a sub-collection as soon as they started coming out a couple years ago or so. And because I was such a huge fan of the dark multiverse concept. That's exactly what these are. These are all dark multiverse variants of Batman, or as I like to call them, the Dark Multiverse Justice League, because these are all Batman variants inspired by, or inspired to be the dark multiverse counterparts of the Justice League members of their main lineup. From left to right, you have Dawnbreaker, the Drowned, Merciless, Batman Who Laughs himself, the Devastator, Red Death, and the Murder Machine. I have Batman Who Laughs on the center, spinning around, obviously because he is the he's the orchestrator of this whole madness, and he is one of my favorite figures in this sub collection, because it took me the longest to find. I slept on buying it, and then I eventually found it, courtesy of Jeff. I couldn't be happier with that. Actually, if you go way back on the channel to my first Toy hunt, not much of a hunt, really. I explained that I was looking for this and why. Maybe in the future I can actually do a video dedicated to my sub-collection of Dark Multiverse Batman figures. As I also do have, but didn't include in this pick, the 3 variant Robin Crow figures and the Batman Grim Knight figure, which is basically like a Batman meets Punisher kind of looking thing. If Batman really went 180 on his standpoint on guns, let's just say. So with that said, we are finally ready to get into my number 1 pick for this top 10. And here we have my top pick, my number 1 pick for this DC Multiverse McFarlane figure top 10 list is Batman Beyond Terry Mcginnis. Steve did a figure review of Batman Beyond recently here on the channel. Go check that out at your own leisure. For me, it's a controversial opinion, I believe, but Batman Beyond Terry Mcginnis is my absolute favorite interpretation of Batman. My favorite character who has ever been Batman other than Bruce Wayne. Bar none, my favorite take on the Batman character. It was one of my favorite shows as a kid. If I have said it before, I've said it 1,000 times that I'm a big fan of legacy-based characters. And if I had to be honest, I would imagine it has to stem from seeing this character. This different character who picked up the mantle of Batman and took it to this super unique level of Batman Beyond. There's not enough that I could say about how much I really like this character and this figure. It's one of my top 10 favorite characters in comics by far. I'd actually probably place it at number 4 of my favorite DC characters, to be completely honest. But that plus how great this figure looks, this is absolutely my mind's eye version of Batman Beyond. I think makes it the absolute perfect candidate for this number 1 spot on this list. It's extremely toyetic. I'm still clamoring to see any of the other Batman Beyond Build-A-Figure Wave figures from the States and Target show up here somehow in Canada, or maybe just bite the bullet and get them online, or whenever things get back to being not so stupid in the world, get over the border and grab them myself. That would be an absolute must-have for me. I mean, it's got the Batwoman Beyond, it's got Blight, it's got Shriek. We have Shriek unmasked over here, but I prefer the masked version. And we are going to be getting a version of Blight here, which I might actually pick up, and an unmasked version of Batwoman Beyond. And I'm not sure if I like it better or not. I don't dislike it at all, but I digress. I'm just ranting at this point. Anywho, this is my number 1 pick. Terry Mcginnis, Batman Beyond. And there we have it. That is my top 10 McFarlane DC Multiverse figures. To review, we have The Flash, Peacemaker, Red Hood, Dr. Fate, Cyborg, Darkseid, Green Lantern John Stewart, the Joker, Green Lantern Hal Jordan, and number 1, Terry Mcginnis, Batman Beyond. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe. That only costs you 2 Mississippis. And if you like what you see and want to see it more, take another half a Mississippi and hit the notification bell so you get notified every time we put out content. If you want to see more of us, hit us up on Facebook and Instagram at When Geeks Collide, or Twitter at WGC Network, and also on Anchor.fm for the podcast for WGC Network, where you can hear Steve, Jeff, maybe even me sometime, talk about things such as Page to the Screen, NSW History 101, Total Van Damage, and so much more, where we will cover all manner of horror, sci-fi, all manner of geekdom. Hit up sunsetcrypt.com, the mothership where this all started. If you want to find me, look me up on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. On Facebook at Gunnar Lang. Instagram and Twitter is IC_Gunnar Lang. Or, if you want to go even further than that, as we've been plugging lately, is my Horizon Comics independent comic company. You can find me there on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter just by looking up Horizon Comics with an X. And even right here on YouTube, I have some videos out of some of my exciting content, brand new original characters, plans for the brand. It's going to keep getting bigger and better. Please come join me over there if you'd like. With all that said, you know what we always say. Geeks out.